Hi, everyone, and welcome to June's OSN Monthly Showcase. We're so excited to have you here today to learn about building your own RSD populated skills library. We'll get started in just one moment. We're so excited that you're here. And again, welcome to the monthly June, or I should say the monthly OSN Showcase for June. And we are excited to have our fantastic technical work group here. And they are going to be taking you through this guided tour of a peek into the kitchen from raw ingredients to ready to consume RSDs. This is really an incredible presentation. We're so delighted to have all these wonderful, thoughtful people here. And we're so appreciative that all of you took time today to join us. And so with that, we want to express our appreciation for funding provided by Walmart for these monthly showcases. So thank you, Walmart. Today's agenda, we're going to do some welcome and announcements, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the OSN Technical Workgroup is cooking up. And we're going to talk about some recipes here. We all love recipes. It's lunchtime. We're going to dive into OSMT to OpenSALT and to Credential Registry. We've got some great speakers to be able to touch upon those particular recipes and tell you a little bit about their secret sauces. And then we're going to turn it over to you and have a little bit of a Q&A. And with that, please place your questions into the chat and we will do our best to tackle them at the end of today's presentation. So type them in, we'll try to catch them, and we'll fry them up later. So, announcements. Please follow us. Join the open skills conversation on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. We want you to be a part of OSN. Join us on social, and get your friends to be a part of this conversation too. It's so important that we collaborate collectively together. And with that, get ready for a new community platform that's going to be introduced to OSN members. We're really excited to start rolling this out, and it's going to be a really great place for all of us to learn and grow together. And so please stay tuned for an invitation in the coming weeks. Now I'd like to turn it over to our fabulous co-leads for our OSN Technical Work Group, Carrie Glover and Nate Otto.
Thank you. And we will have myself and Nate and Jeannie and Nate Argo from Credential Engine, and you'll get to meet Joshua and Dave from Public Consulting Group. So first, a bit about the technical work group. We're OSN members. We're focused on the definitions and implementations of skills and skills management systems. For example, at our work group meeting yesterday, we included a deep dive on the latest changes to the Open Badges format and the acknowledgement of skills through assertions. 2 weeks ago, we highlighted a vendor with a demonstration of the CAS project skills management system from EduWorks. And that was exciting. And we discuss improvements and additions to RSDs. We share questions, successes, and visions of the future in skills management. We provide resources and tools, and we support and recognize the benefits of open source development. So a few of those tools will be highlighted here today in our skills kitchen. But first, I smell something baking, and it might be cake. But the OSN community has likely convinced everyone here of the powerful benefit of skills. Elements of skills and what they represent have been discussed and considered. And some of us already have put skills and competencies into practice and are enjoying the results. But for many, the process of moving from raw RSDs remains shrouded because you can't just simply toss an egg, milk, sugar, and flour into a cake pan and expect everyone to enjoy it. Likewise, the process of baking something valuable and tasty from skills requires specific configurations, software, and environment. However, the result is well worth the effort and will give the ability to manage your skills and share them too. Good. Thanks. So today we will highlight 3 available tools. We've got OSMT, we've got OpenSALT, and Credential Registry. And each presenter will provide details for preparing and sharing those skills and credentials. These are just a few of the tools represented by members, though, of the technical work group. So if you have questions or hopefully more interest in what we're cooking up, then please consider becoming an involved member of the work group. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Nate Otto for a demonstration of the setup of OSMT.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. So I'm Nate Otto. I'm glad to be a co-facilitator with Carrie of the technical work group at the OSN. The OSN, as many of you know, if you're on this webinar, you know about us. Standards body, but we work with open web standards. And we use this metaphor in the technical work group of a recipe where we help our members understand how to take that raw material of their great ideas in terms of which skills matter in their communities and the open standards that are available in the world, everything from open vocabularies like the credential transparency description language and the case vocabulary from One EdTech to achievement standards like open badges and the W3C verifiable credentials data model. And we help our members figure out how to coordinate around using these standards to publish skills information and complete interoperability user stories. Do things really that are really interesting with skills. Because at the OSN, we want to make a education to employment skills ecosystem where there actually is skills information moving around between different parties, published in open formats and consumed on the other side so that people have the benefits of being able to be, access new opportunities based on their skills. The Open Skills Management Tool, or OSMT, is a tool that was produced by WGU and published as open source software under an Apache license in collaboration with the Open Skills Network. And the tool here aims to allow any organization to publish a skills library. Here are all the RSDs, or rich skill descriptors, that this organization publishes. You can organize them into collections and publish them in the CTDL vocabulary so that anyone in the world can reference those skills in the various different artifacts that they produce, whether they're publishing a job profile with different job roles that require those skills, or if they're awarding a credential to an individual who's learned a skill and gets an open badge that recognizes that achievement. So OSMT is open source software. It's based on a Java Spring Boot stack with an Angular single page application front end and relies on several backend services, including a Redis caching layer, a MySQL database, an Elasticsearch cluster for searching of job codes and other skills. And it relies on authentication using OpenID Connect. The Okta provider for OpenID Connect is kind of built into the code and is really easy to work with. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And a lot of these services are delivered as Docker containers and images. And so this is a big common tech stack being used for a lot of different software out there in the world. A lot of developers are familiar with working with this. But what I want to talk about today is going from this raw material of the code to an actual deployed instance of OSMT under your organization's control in production. Because the open source code includes a lot of great instructions for how developers can get started with this application. And it has a really easy to use CLI with a quick start that gets OSMT running on your local computer. But it doesn't go all the way to telling you how to deploy it in production. Next slide. So as I mentioned, this is a Docker-based tool, and there's a lot of options if you want to provide a Docker-based service. Docker or containerization technology is taking over the industry for deploying scalable web services based on repeatable images. We can just put images up on a bunch of different cloud service providers. There's so many options out there for who you work with in order to run Docker. the traditional method of having servers in your basement is going away in favor of using secure cloud service providers. And there's tons of options that can work with Docker, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, DigitalOcean, Rackspace, IBM. There's dozens more of providers that you could be working with that provide the capability to run a Docker service, but there's so many options for figuring out how to actually do that. There's a lot of different configuration dials you can turn, and we've seen some production configurations for OSMT get really expensive because the organization hosting them has decided to really like crank up all the settings to make this application very strong. They're putting in things like load balancers and auto scaling groups to be able to handle large amounts of traffic. They're doing all sorts of advanced monitoring, and yeah, that's great, but it costs $600 a month. And we're at the technical working group talking to a lot of organizations that want an inexpensive way to get into publishing their skills library. So today I'm going to show you a recipe that is fairly basic in terms of what its options are, gets you up and running with OSMT for $40 a month. Slide. All right, so let's talk through, here's an option for running OSMT. And so the idea is to create a little starter pack install of OSMT that works on production, but it's simple enough for most IT departments to be able to wrap their heads around. It's customizable, so if your IT department wants to tune up one of those dials and increase the power on your system, it's pretty easy to do so. And this will work on a bunch of different cloud service providers, but I'm going to show you some examples using DigitalOcean, which is a general purpose cloud platform provider with really easy click-through setup for different resources. And then you get in and SSH into your servers and accomplish some of the goals. So as I mentioned, we want to keep costs low. I estimated this stack will cost you about $40 a month to get into production, which includes one basic, what DigitalOcean calls a droplet, running Ubuntu with Docker, where you run some of the core services. Then you've got to run Elasticsearch as well. There's many options for Elasticsearch. You could choose a fully managed option, but most fully managed options, such as from Elastic Cloud themselves, are $95 a month. So you can run it yourself for cheaper, but it requires a lot of RAM, so you need a $20 droplet on DigitalOcean to get that one done. And then I've chosen a $15 a month managed MySQL database. You could run that one yourself, but databases are real standard. You can get some pretty good affordable managed databases like this one out there. And of course, you're going to want a domain name on there. But if you want to run this on a subdomain of a domain that you already control, then you don't need to pay for an extra domain registration. All right, let's go forward and see how this actually works. So as I mentioned, it's really easy to get OSMT running on your local computer. You can use a tool called Docker Compose to run all of these different services that you need just on your local machine. You know, you've got to use a bunch of your RAM and CPU to dedicate to that. But that, for developers, works to get into the code and start messing with things, changing configuration, and seeing how it will look in production. But no one else can look at that running. You've got to actually get it on a server somewhere in the cloud in order for members of your organization to be able to use it. So I've shown a couple of the different constituent parts of OSMT here and a recommended option for each of those layers. That first Docker droplet on DigitalOcean will run the OSMT application itself, which is a Kotlin Spring Boot backend and an Angular JavaScript front end. And then it will also manage the Nginx reverse proxy and Let's Encrypt certificate manager, so you can get an SSL certificate in front of that application. And then we've separated out the MySQL database into a managed database service. Elasticsearch, have chosen the self-hosted Elasticsearch. And then Redis is also, the cache is also included in that core basic Docker image. So let's go forward and see the steps to getting this running. So I've created a little open source tool that will help with getting your configuration onto your droplet and using Docker Compose with production ready settings. And I've called this OSMT wrapper. I'll give you a GitHub link on the next slide. So you download this code to your own computer from GitHub, and you go on to DigitalOcean, sign up for the resources there that I mentioned, the 2 different droplets and the managed database, register and configure that domain name. There's instructions in the OSMT wrapper tool for how to set the DNS settings. Configure SSH access to your droplets, or if you choose something other than DigitalOcean, to those actual server machines. And then you can SSH in there onto the Elasticsearch node in order to install and configure and turn on Elasticsearch. Follow the guide to protect it with a firewall so that it's only accessible within the little local network called the VPC that makes up your service. And then you got to set up that authentication. So you can sign up for a free Okta developer account that's usable for up to 100 users, and can copy and paste the secrets into your configuration files in the OSMT wrapper. Fill out all the rest of the settings for what you want your service to be named in the OSMT wrapper configuration files. And then you copy that code up to your production droplet, which will run the OSMT service, Redis, and the certificate manager. And then you run a simple script to get that started. Wait about 5 or 10 minutes for all of the database and search indexes to be preloaded with everything from job codes to a bunch of initial import data to get you started. And then you can hit that domain in your browser and you are off and to the races. Finished cake. Go to the next slide. So I prepared one earlier for this demo. It's at openrecognitionskills.org. The technical work group is going to work with the OSN Open Recognition Work Group in order to use OSMT for the ability to publish skills that matter to the open recognition community. And I'll make a quick note. I didn't get the SSL certificate on this one yet, but it's coming to this domain real soon. I fixed the bug, but there was a bug that wasn't saving the certs right, and I ran right through my rate limit. So the one I prepared earlier isn't protected by SSL yet, but it will be within a few days as soon as I let the rate limit go back down on the awesome free SSL service, Let's Encrypt. Provided a GitHub link here to the OSMT wrapper where you can download that, read the detailed instructions inside there for each of those steps that I showed you on the last slide for how to copy and paste all the right configuration values, and just get started with those simple scripts that use Docker Compose to get it going. So I'd love to hear from any of you who get started using OSMT in production with this OSMT wrapper method. And you can definitely contact me to ask questions, hire me to run it for you if you like, or suggest improvements. And so I dropped in my Twitter link there. Thanks, Christian, for sharing it in the chat. So that's OSMT. We look forward to the growth of the OSMT ecosystem, and I'll keep this wrapper up to date with the latest and greatest images from OSMT as new versions of that code come out with easy ways to update your service over time. I'll hand it back over to Carrie to hand it to the OpenSALT team.
Right, thank you, Nate, for that. And yes, next we're going to hear from OpenSALT and Joshua Marks and David Ford.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, it is afternoon for everybody but me. So OpenSALT, I should have known about the baking reference because salt is in almost every recipe. Stands for Standards Alignment Tool. It's an open source tool, PCG created with partners ACT and School City when what was previously called IMS Global, now called One EdTech, was developing the case specification. I co-chaired the case working group, and we built this tool to make sure that the specification was able to achieve its primary goal, which was to enable states to publish K-12 and post-secondary standards and learning objectives. So we were working with an existing practice and a history of states publishing K-12 standards as PDF files that typically express hierarchical taxonomies around each of the core subjects and supplemental subjects. So we created OpenSALT as a way for us to validate the specification and also to have a number of versions of the application that were certified as both providers and consumers of the CASE standard when the CASE was launched some, 4 years ago now. So you can find out all the information about OpenSALT, if you go to the next slide, at opensalt.org. Can I share my screen? I'll give you a quick tour of some of these links here. And then Dave can give you a quick demo of the process of installing and running your own instance. Share screen to share. So OpenSALT.org is a website where you can learn about OpenSALT. We have a video that sort of describes the founding of OpenSALT, and you can learn about the features, including demonstration videos for the key features of creating a framework, editing a framework, aligning between frameworks, crosswalking between frameworks. Essentially, a framework is what OSMT considers a collection, but it has a much more complete hierarchical structure and highly flexible structure. This thing is in my way. Go away. Go away. How do I get rid of it? Go away. So next is the Git repo. In GitHub, there is a open source repo where you will clone the code and create your own fork if you want to create your own fork. There are many versions of OpenSALT out there running in the wild. ACT still has one they use in their backend for some of their commercial services. The IMS Global One EdTech CASE network is a derivative of OpenSALT that was forked earlier on and has some special features and presentation associated with IMS Global. Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortia was one of our first clients to help underwrite the development. We built a version of OpenSALT that's used to manage their assessment content specification. The state of North Dakota runs a state-level OpenSALT server where they publish their K-12 academic standards, their CTE standards, and 3 of their post-secondary institutions are publishing their course catalogs and course objectives frameworks. The Dexterra Institute, which creates post-secondary interoperability, middleware, and services, has specified OpenSALT and CASE as a core component of their solution suite. The primary user of OpenSALT is PCG ourselves. We developed OpenSALT and continue to maintain it for our clients like Smarter Balance, like North Dakota, and others. And we provide support and maintenance and managed hosting for the platform. Cyber.org is another partner of ours that is now using OpenSALT to publish national standards around cybersecurity. Very similar to what Nate covered, the open source platform in our case is a LAMP stack, PHP, JavaScript, and MySQL with a Docker configuration for easy deployment to many different Linux distributions. Unlike what Nate went over, it's really a single Docker that contains all of the components, the load balancing front end, the Symfony framework, which is what is developed in all of the JavaScript libraries, as well as the database, are all part of that same deployment package. But there's even cheaper ways to get into using it. First of all, We have a sandbox, so if you want to explore using OpenSALT and just play around, just send me an email requesting an account. I'll create a organization and a user or set of users for you to play around in the sandbox. You'll be able to export frameworks and post them elsewhere from the sandbox if you'd like, but the sandbox is volatile, so don't do any production work. If you want to do production work, we offer a hosted service at OpenSALT.net. Some people we just provide free access to publish in OpenSALT.net. If it's a commercial service, we'll talk with you about the scope. Usually it's when we're doing editorial or creating frameworks for our clients, we'll do it in OpenSALT.net and make it available through OpenSALT.net. So if you have needs to create frameworks, we have a bunch of folks we call salt miners that work with us to develop and maintain competency and skill frameworks and publish and maintain them either in OpenSALT.net or in your own hosted instance or a managed host instance under your domain that we can operate and maintain for you. In terms of costs, I hadn't prepared some specific costs, but essentially the costs that Nate went over, if you remove the cost for the search index interface and for the single sign-on and a separate database server, they're comparable. It's a very low cost to stand up, and it's low transactional because almost everything is cached and can be edge cached into content distribution networks. So the load in operation, even under some volumes, is pretty low, and we run many different instances on a single Linux box. The GitHub repo for the deployment is here with the directions for installing and deploying. And so Dave, if you want to give a quick demo, that would be the time.
All right. Just once here.
While Dave does that, Dave is the lead developer, so if you post any questions or requests or issues in our Git repo, he or I will be the ones to respond.
Yeah. Unfortunately, apparently, I share.
Christian, can you pass the host privilege over to David so that he can?
Yeah, no, I think it's the OS. I haven't shared WebEx before, so saying I can't do it unless I quit. So it's 1 second.
As Dave gets ready to screen share, which probably requires a restart, Christian or Christina, has any questions come in around OpenSALT that Joshua could field?
I could quickly show OpenSALT in action. Let me do that. Since my screen sharing does seem to work, I will do that.
Perfect. I'm passing it back to you, Joshua.
Okay, screen 2. Share. All right, so we'll quickly show our OpenSALT.net.
Terribly sorry about that.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, I hadn't prepared that part.
Okay.
To get that going. So, share the screen.
All right, let me pass it back to you, David. Perfect.
So here's the repository for the deployment, and it gives the recipe for installation. I've already set up a droplet, and basically $5 to $20 type of droplet in something like DigitalOcean will be enough. And then basically just clone the repository. So once we go in there, there's a couple settings we need to set up for one's local setup, but not too many. One is being able to put a secret in thing, which version of OpenSALT. If you do want to run MySQL in a separate installation, you can tell it what machine to use and give it the all the information about the database, and then and that's about all for basic. For something simple, you can just use Docker Compose with the MySQL container, and so to do that, we save the volume. So that the data is persistent between restarts. And then we just tell it, let's start up the server. You have to give it a little bit of time on the initial start to warm up the database so that it can create the stuff with a brand new volume that was created. Once that's done, we can set the database up. So we didn't quite enough time for it to warm up. So then you'll run through and get all the database tables and everything set up, and it takes half a minute or so. It does that. Basically, this was set up to be fairly minimal. Right now, it's configured to just be able to connect from the local machine. That's one of the things that by default, it's set up so that you would have in front of it a load balancer or some kind of reverse proxy. It uses Caddy as the web server, and so it can actually be run on its own and deal with the less encrypted certificates. So, done here. Okay. And so one of the things that we can set up, which it isn't set up by default, is to expose the web server to the general internet. By default, we have it set up so it's done in a safe way. Restart it. We already set up the database. So now one first thing we have to do is get an organization set up. All the permissions are local in this case, as opposed to using OAuth like OAuth does. But that's something that we have changing past. We might add some organization. First user. Organization.
This user is the super admin that will then be able to configure all the other users.
Well, you can create any type of user you want.
Actually, yeah. Through the console.
So the first one would be the super user. And so once that's set up, the recipe here is telling you how you could get at it if you had on your local machine. But in this case, we're wanting it available outside. I've already set up a DNS entry. So we can just go there and generate the certificate, and we have it run. Now we can log in as that initial user we created.
There's options to put a logo on there. You can, of course, change the CSS if you want to style it. Once you create this user, you can then create as many orgs as you want and then create org admins for each of those orgs. They each have their own rights and permissions within the create and edit interface for making and maintaining frameworks. And the frameworks are hierarchical and organized, labeled collections of RSDs. And there's an API.
We can try creating an initial framework here.
Yeah, good.
And those are the only two fields that are actually required for a case framework. So to do that.
And add a child item there.
Add a child item. Often encoding scheme, create it, and at that point, now here's a link to the shared.
So in under 10 minutes, we stood up an OpenSALT server and published our first RSD, which is available on the API. Why don't you show the API doc?
I think that's getting more complicated now.
Yeah. Anyhow,
to the point where we have the URI for an RSD, so they're shared now.
All right, there you go. Another OpenSALT server born into the universe. And they're all interoperable, right? You can mirror one server to another server all day long, as well as with the Credential Engine. As a good segue to the next presentation, because the Credential Engine has a case interface and can consume case data. And we demonstrated this in North Dakota, where we've created frameworks that have been ingested into Credential Engine and aligned with credentials and Credential Engine.
Thank you, Joshua. It sounds like a perfect segue. Carrie, do you want me to
just go for it? Yep.
Okay, I was gonna say I'll just start cooking.
Okay.
Food theme.
We're hungry.
Yep, let's go. Okay, so continuing our recipes for scrumptious RSDs, as Joshua was pointing out, we can just go ahead and go to the next slide. That whether you're using OpenSALT or if you're using OSMT, you could still use Credential Engine's tools for cooking up RSDs. So just foundationally, here's some pieces to the recipe. First, we're going to start off with the credential transparency description language. We're going to publish RSDs. We're going to link them, and we're going to put that data in the Credential Registry. And all of that can be seen in the Credential Finder. But what's important here is the recipes that we're going to talk about with Credential Engine end up with linked open data available for anyone to utilize in their systems and to contextualize those RSDs. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So we're going to walk through the steps for a recipe here. And we're going to start off by picking our container. So everything that I'm going to talk about with the Credential Registry is all based on the credential transparency description language. And as I go through this, my colleague Nate Argo will go ahead and drop links in the chat, and you can check these things out. So we have two containers that we can put our competencies in or skills in. We can put them in a collection, or we can put them in a competency framework. And the main difference between the two is that one, the collection has numbers, so you're really just creating a flat list, a container full of skills. And a framework is a way where you could have a flat list if you want, or you could have a hierarchy. So a framework has children that allow complex hierarchies, but either way, you can populate them. You can put skills in them, and those skills can have a lot of information with them to contextualize them and give you rich and important information. And I've got a couple of examples of skills or competencies on the slide here, and you can take a look at those in the Credential Finder. And if you click the Detail tab of the page in the Finder that Nate will drop in the links in the chat, you'll see you can click on the JSON LD link, and you can see what that linked data looks like. And we can go on and move forward with our recipe. So let's move on to step 2. So to create these decadently rich RSDs, we can pick from any number of competency properties. What's important to know about the CTDL is it is a language, and you can pick the terms, the words that you need to use for your purposes, for your use cases, for your tools, for your RSDs. And so what you're seeing here is a pick list of all the properties that you can use with competency to really make it rich and decadent, give it that contextualization, give it that meaning for others to be able to know what that competency or that skill is all about, and to help it with reusability. You can take a look at any of these terms. Every one of them has a definition, and Nate can drop that link in the chat as well, and you can take a look and you will see that you can follow the links and read the definitions for their semantic meaning. And let's move on with our recipe. So the third thing we're going to do is we're going to select the tools for creating our rich RSDs. And you can see here we have a number of ways that you can work with the Credential Engine publishing stack. This publishing stack is available for anyone to use. Anyone can set up a free account. So if you don't have say a OSMT instance, or you don't have a case instance, you can use these tools. Anyone can use them. And you can also use them in conjunction with those tools as well. But if you want to use our API, or if you want to import data in, you can, and as Joshua was just talking about, you can import directly from case. You can copy paste, you can upload spreadsheets, you can do manual entry. We've got choices. So depending on where you're at, where your skills are now, where they sit, how you're managing them, we have many options for how you can get those into the Credential Engine publishing system and select your tools, whatever works for you. On the right-hand side of the screenshot here is the competency and skill system. And the competency and skill system is open source competency editor. And actually anyone, just as was explained with OSMT and with OpenSALT, anyone can access that open source editor. And if you have the capability, you can install that into your environment, and you could create rich skill descriptors as CTDL. And let's move on to the next step in our recipe. So we have to put the icing on the cake here, or on the RSDs in this case. And for Credential Engine, what that means is linking RSDs from other things. So those RSDs, they can have links out to all kinds of substantiating information, but there also needs to be links to those skills. So if you're describing credentials, learning opportunities such as courses, assessments, jobs, transfer value of, say, courses, or transfer value of competencies, education and career pathways, you can use the Credential Registry tools. You can use the case editor that I just showed you that's built into our tool stack, and you can link all that data up, making it incredibly valuable and important. And what you're seeing here are some screenshots from the Credential Finder, and you can see the raw data in the registry for each one of these things. Nate will drop those links in the chat. You can check this out in the Credential Finder. But what's important is that we're linking all of this data together, helping with the aspect of contextualization that's so important to understand what are these rich skills all about. Once data is in the Credential Registry as CTDL linked open data, it's available for utilizing. There's no like proprietary layer or anything on top of that data. Literally, when you click on a JSON LD link on any of those Credential Finder detail pages, the data goes in that way, it's in the registry that way, and that is exactly how it comes out of the registry. So now that we have created our decadently rich RSDs, we need to go ahead and publish them as the linked open data, have all those relationships, share that information out into the world as linked open data. And we can go on to the next. And so those are the tools, those are the ingredients, all available through Credential Engine. And here is a listing of how to get cooking. So you can utilize these tools, any parts of them. If you don't need all of them, maybe you only need to use the CTDL. It's available for you to use with an open license. Anyone can use the CTDL. You can create your Credential Registry account. There's no cost for that. You can just go create an account and you could take advantage of these tools and linking all of this data together and sharing it as rich skill descriptions. And utilizing our publishing tools. You can also publish this data to the registry. And of course, the main point of the registry is to have this fantastic repository of linked open data for others to utilize. And that's really, really important aspect of this work. There's also a GitHub repo. So for those of you who are interested in hosting a tool in your own environments, just as was described with OSMT and was described with the OpenSALT case, what you can do is you can install the CAS editor, the Competency and Skills System Editor, in your own environment. There's links to basically download it from the GitHub repo and utilize it in your own environment to create CTDL rich skill descriptions. And then you can also publish that data to the Credential Registry. And that is our recipe. Any questions?
All right, it looks like we do have a number of questions that Christina has received from attendees and is placing in the chat. Christina, would you or Carrie like to highlight a few of those questions for panelists to talk about on audio?
Sure. So we have, I'll start with the most recent from Anna Maria. Is there a way to get access to the registry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You set up an account and basically request access to the registry, and it depends on what you want to do. If you want to access it because you want to create RSDs or other types of linked open data, you basically just set up an account and we'll give you access to do that. And if you want to get data from the registry, it all begins with setting up that account as well. And you will do that. And specifically, when you do that, you'll see that you can request to either put data in or take data out. So yes, that's the whole idea of the registry. Appreciate that question. And we can drop a link in the chat to where you can create an account.
And as a side note to that, the records themselves, if you want to just get an individual record by its URI, as we showed in the Finder, you can access that directly without any kind of an account or setup or anything.
Mm-hmm. Right. If you take a look at any of the Credential Finder, what I call a detail page, and again, the Credential Finder is a tool for seeing all of the data in the registry, which is all raw data. So of course we need to have a human-friendly way to be able to see it. If you click on those JSON LD links, you will see that you could see the resources that form the graph in the registry. And if you just click on a URI, you're literally going straight to that data. So Nate can put a sample of what those URIs, that URI pattern is as well in the chat.
Thank you, Jeannie. Another question, what is the benefit of using OSMT over other RSD creators? And maybe not the benefit, but what is a benefit?
Sure, so I can take that question. And as the technical working group, we don't necessarily say that one or another one of these approaches is objectively better than the others. There are some differences between each of the tools that were demoed today, and then other tools that we only mentioned briefly, or hand rolling an approach for your organization to publish RSDs according to the OSN's recommendations without even using any of these specific tools. But each of these tools do have different advantages and capabilities. Some of the advantages for OSMT include that it's pretty easy to customize with different configuration settings for your organization's name and authorship. The user model is really simple. It just relies on your existing user database in Okta or another OpenID Connect provider, and it's a fairly simple authoring environment. So those attributes may make that application a really good fit for your organization.
Thank you, Nate. Will these slides be available after this session? And the answer is yes. We will post this showcase on the Open Skills Network website, so you can refer back, and it will also be posted on our YouTube channel, so you can refer back to this showcase. Another question, is there a company that creates open source RSDs so organizations don't have to do so?
So there's a lot of them. Each of the states in K-12 publish state standards. Many of them publish them in case format. And the case network has every one of the 50 states, math and ELA, and many of the states, all of their standards. So if you're working at the K-12 level, CASE already has a vibrant network that's up and running and using the CASE standard. All of those are open and referenceable. PCG has created at OpenSALT.net something we call the Math and the ELA Compendium. These are master frameworks that we've crosswalked to every one of the 50 states. So if you want to create or align your materials to our compendium, you will immediately be crosswalked to every one of the 50 states in math and ELA. And we continue to work on those kinds of intermediary crosswalk frameworks and rudimentary skill lists as a way to create a network of exchange, much like OCFC is also trying to do through automated means. So there's a lot of action there. Organizations that have objectives that they want people to meet, be it an employer, a K-12 or post-secondary institution, should all publish their standards. And if they can agree and share on the standards and competencies that they teach and assess to, then we will all get benefit by having that commonality. And anybody who publishes open can be referenced and used.
One other effort that's coming along besides the several that Joshua just mentioned there is OSMT is gaining the capability of what's called an OSMT search hub, which enables OSMT to OSMT search so that if you are using this tool, you can find all the skills published by other organizations that are also using the tool on their own servers that are all centralized in a particular search hub, and so that you don't generate a new copy of a skill that already exists in the world. The OSN definitely supports reuse of existing skill definitions and shared usage across different organizations that are in the same market vertical, industry, or discipline.
Great. Thank you very much, Joshua and Nate. I will turn it back over to Christian.
Thank you, everybody, so much for attending today's showcase. We want to appreciate our fantastic panel and thank them so much for donating not only their knowledge and expertise, but their time today. And thank you all for showing up and being a part of this conversation and spending your time, your afternoon with us. And hopefully you had a little lunch beforehand. Otherwise, I know you're going to dive into it afterwards. Thank you, everybody, so much. And I also want to make sure that everybody knows that our next showcase will be on July 21st. It's going to be slightly later in the day at 4 o'clock Eastern. And we're going to be talking skills with WGU and our friends from down under, Edalex. So we hope to see you then, July 21st. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.